I know. I am aware of the impossibility that my chosen title implies. I felt the exact same confusion upon hearing my orders. But bear with me if you would. Hopefully, it'll come to make some sense. My hair is whipped violently back from my head with a blast of the frozen wind as the helicopter ascends, lifting itself up and off the Arctic ground before the door has even fully closed. I grimace with the lurch in my stomach, muttering a quick prayer as we leave the earth behind. I'm not particularly religious, but I'll admit it. I'm scared. You find me at the tail end of a confusing and chaotic 24 hours. Yesterday morning, my military routine was disrupted by my superior, and I was deliberately separated from the rest of my squadron. I was informed that I would be taking a brief hiatus from the NATO Rapid Reaction Corps here in Norway, and would be temporarily relocated to a coalition-based outpost in the Ural Mountains. The Ural, sir? I had replied. But that's in Russia, isn't it? That's right, he said levelly. NATO-Russian coalition. NATO-Russian coalition. I considered the existence of such a coalition incredibly unlikely, especially considering certain current geopolitical circumstances. And yet, here I am, on board a Royal Norwegian Air Force helicopter, departing from the airbase at Bardufoss and in transit to the base at Orland, where one of NATO's finest will fly me directly into Russian airspace, across the country and towards the Urals, the mountain range that marks the border between European and Asian Russia. I feel sick, and not just because of the choppiness of the flight. I suffer through it. We arrive in Orland. I am bustled from one means of transport to another, out from the helicopter and into a plane. Space enough inside for plenty, but aside from myself and the pilots, entirely empty. Another American? The pilot remarks as I clamber on board, pointing to the flag emblazoned across the arm of my uniform. He turns to his co-pilot and mutters something in Norwegian. I picked up a little of the language during my time in the country. I think he says something about a one bet. Excuse me? I ask as I buckle myself into my seat. The pilot turns to look at me again over his shoulder. The last 4 were Americans, he says simply. I'd have thought they were overdue for a European by now. Canadian maybe. Adam Smith, yes? Yes, I reply. Yes, that's me. Good. Great. Well, here we go then, Adam. Fingers crossed we don't get shut down by any Moscow missiles, eh? He chuckles and turns back to the controls, failing to see the impact that his joke had had on my constitution. I still don't understand, I shout out above the rising roar of the engine. No one's telling me a damn thing. Why am I going to Russia? Why do we have people stationed in the Urals? And they're not spies, right? They're working with Russians? So what the hell is going on? The co-pilot shoots me a sympathetic look. Secret information, friend. Classified. We ferried the people to and fro, but that's all. He shifts and turns back to the runway ahead. But you're in for a rough couple of weeks, Smith. Maybe longer. Best of luck to you. And the aircraft begins its run between the mountains, clambering up and into the sky, the snow like little stars in the dark as we soar up high between them. I watch the little blinking lights on the sides of the wings. It's early as hell, and the sun is still yet to rise. We soar through the darkness, and I settle into my seat, doing my best to try and grab a few hours of sleep. Not an easy thing to do when you're expecting to be blown out of the sky at any given second, burnt half to a crisp in the initial explosion, caught amidst billowing flames and plumes of smoke, plummeting in free fall towards the ice and rock below. I scratch the side of my neck, shifting in my seat. To be honest, I'm not even sure that I'm supposed to be here. I happen to share the exact same name as another soldier on base, you see. A guy also named Adam Smith. In a further bizarrity, he was even born in the exact same town, just a few years apart. And we've been mistaken for each other on numerous occasions. Not that we look anything alike, of course. I doubt that even matters. We all look the same to the higher-ups. These misunderstandings have never been particularly consequential. They've always been remedied pretty promptly once they were pointed out. Amusing to everyone else involved. Nothing quite like this has ever happened before. Ever. And I've never even noticed anyone disappearing from the base, despite what the pilot said. The last 4 were Americans. Why has nobody spoken about this before? Why is this the first time I'm hearing about a joint US-Russian base? A base in Russia? Surely not. It makes no strategic sense. It's downright dangerous. But I am unable to come up with any concrete, logical theories. And so, I spend the next few hours drifting in and out of bleary, unrestful sleep, tainted with disturbing dreams. The hours pass. The sun rises, and any real chance of sleep is lost. I drowsily watch through the window as the Urals appear beneath us, below the layer of cloud. We fly over it in a white arc, and the pilots begin our descent. Ears popping as we draw closer and closer to the side of a runway nestled amongst the mountains, attached to what looks like a very modest military installation. The wheels judder against the asphalt. The plane trundles to a gradual stop. My heart hammers. Russia. Well, the pilot says after a moment. This is your stop. He unfastens and steps out of the cockpit, stretching his legs. He pauses, and there is a poignant moment between us as he looks to me. Then, he holds out his hand. I shake it. Good luck, man, he says quietly. All traces of sleepiness are blasted back with a rush of wintry wind as the door clangs open. Jesus! I shout out into the gale, shielding my eyes from the wind and frost as I make my careful way down the steps towards the ground. I am greeted there by 2 men, 1 American and 1 Russian. I salute, and both salute in return. Saluted by a Russian, on Russian soil. The American mutters something in Russian to his partner, then steps forward. "Smith!" he calls out, loud above the winds. "Yes, sir!" I shout back. "With me," he replies, turning and walking the length of the runway towards a collection of squat, low-grade buildings. I hurry along after them, casting a quick look at our surroundings. There is nothing but grey and white, bleak, snowy mounds of rock, mountain, mist and concrete. We hit into one of the nearest buildings, revealing it to be a part of a corridor-connected network. I draw the door closed with some effort, and with the thud of the door, the roar of the gale is replaced by the quiet buzz of electric lights. The 2 officers do not stop walking, and I move to keep pace. "They'll want you up in the outpost before it gets dark tonight," the American says to me. "Grab some breakfast at the canteen. The wind is due to die down in an hour or so. Officer Sokolov will take you via helicopter to the closest available site, and will then lead you on foot from there to the outpost. You are to address him as sir whilst you're here. Is that understood?" I falter. Yes sir, but canteen is that way," the officer points. "Helicopter port is down there. I know you'll have a barrel of questions, Smith, and to not have them answered is frustrating. But you have been assigned to the outpost. You will serve for 2 weeks duty, possibly longer depending on the weather. You are doing a duty to your country." He stops and points again. "Canteen, Smith, is that way." He claps me on the shoulder, and the discussion is done. Away they walk, leaving me fumbling for words like an idiot in the corridor of where exactly? I look around. Grey walls, noteboards and signs, all written in Russian of course. But I recognize a military installation when I see one. My stomach growls. I cannot deny my hunger, so I anxiously consider my predicament as I go grab some food. I think I might be the only American in this section of the facility. The canteen is mostly empty, though there are a smattering of Russians at the far tables. Some shoot me glances, most pay me no mind. So I mind my business in turn, filling my stomach until it is time for the next rough leg of my journey. Since the beginning, since it first became aware back at Bardavos that I was going on something of an excursion, there's been this building, growing, gnawing knot of anxiety inside of me, slowly spinning and tightening all the cords that it is attached to. Around it goes, around and around. The pressure rises. Another helicopter ride. The American officer bids me a rapid goodbye, and accompanied by the Russian Sokolov, I believe his name was, we are flown across the Urals, higher and higher. Sokolov gives me 2 pills to take en route. Acetazolamide, he mutters. Then, potassium. He points up to the sky. For our altitude. I take them both, and then, after brief consideration, he hands me a small capsule box stuffed full of them. In case of need, he says, and I thank him. The ice now broken, I risk a question. I still don't understand, sir. This outpost, hidden away in the mountains. Why are there Americans here too? Why not just Russians? What makes this place in particular so important? International agreement is the only response. Secret, important. And then he leans back against the helicopter walls with his arms folded, eyes closed. I sigh quietly, assuming that this means he has deemed the matter closed. But as I turn to look out the window in the world below, he mutters one more quick phrase. Monsters. At the gate. He says, as the plates of the helicopter whir, round and around and around. The helicopter goes as high as it can into the mountains. There are some decidedly nerve-inducing moments, but it at last brings us down onto a crude helipad in the cradle of a stone. Upon our departure, we are then forced to walk, to climb, almost for the bulk of the afternoon. Then evening. My head hurts, and after a point, I find myself wincing with almost every step. Not much further, Sokolov says, as a sudden sharp gust blows snow into our faces. Hour to go, 90 minutes most. Sweat butts across my forehead. But I nod and continue to climb. 70 minutes later, the outpost itself at last shimmers into view through the fog. The mountain goes higher still, but from here, we are given a commanding view of the rocky plains and outcrops, drops and cliffs all around. At least, we would be if the day was clear. At present, these struts of rock appear as little more than looming shadows through the mists. Flashes of color drop my eye, and I glance up, wearied, to see 5 flags above the outpost's roof, flapping in the wind. The one on the leftmost is the flag of the Russian Federation, bands of white, blue and red. It's in pretty good condition, though the same cannot be said for the other flags, tattered and string-worn, past their best days. Beside the Russian flag is Old Glory herself, the stars and stripes. To its right of this is the Union Jack, and to its right beyond is the flag of Norway. After that is an empty spire, and then there's one more flag at the far end, and this is the NATO ensign, white and navy. As I said before, these latter 4 flags have seen better days. These flags are almost the outpost's tallest points, beaten by a lightning rod, and what looks like a standalone tower a little further out across the mountain. partly shrouded in fog. If I squint, I think I can just about make out a lightning rod of the tower zone. The outpost itself is a series of closely clustered, roughly rectangular black-grey buildings. There is a white, scratched-up tank attached to the wall of one of these buildings, linked up with pipes. I cannot see all the way around the outpost from here, but it looks like it might be built right up the edge of the cliff on the other side, and likely hangs over a steep drop. There are a couple of standalone sheds, an aerial dish or two, and what looks like a wreck of what might once have been a water tower off to one side. Sokolov clicks his tongue and mutters something under his breath when he sees it. This collapsed structure is not the most interesting feature of this outpost up here in the mountains, however, nor are the curious combinations of flag waving in the wind. There are three key features that alert my sense of curiosity the most. The first is the low circular wall that borders the outpost's perimeter. It only comes up to about waist level, and the officer and I are able to climb over it easily enough. But the surface is completely covered in chalk. Once we've crossed, I watch with uncertain interest as Sokolov carefully ensures that our hand and footprints have been scrubbed away, using his fingers to re-smooth out the layer of chalk. And the second of these three features are the symbols and scrawlings drawn all across the body of the outpost itself. Most of these drawings are crosses, but amongst them I spy multiple wheels, watchful eyes, moons and suns. I see the stars of David, an eagle with widespread wings, and what appear to be a whole horde of ancient, Slavic, or maybe Celtic runes. But the aspect that gives me the most cause for alarm is the object attached to the side of the outpost, above 12 or so feet off the ground, but clearly connected to its interior. It is, to put it bluntly, an enormous gun. It has the appearance of a massive, white-grey rifle, like something a giant would wield. Though its exact make is not one I'm familiar with. I've never seen such a design in my life. A wall too low to keep people out. Religious graffiti. And the world's largest gun. I do not have long to dwell on these abnormalities, as we have now approached the outer gate of the complex. Sokolov presses the side of his hand against the buzzer, an action he repeats 4 or 5 quick times. As we wait for a response, he turns to me and scratches his jaw, looking me up and down, as if properly seeing me for the first real time, assuming me as an individual. "Think good thoughts," he says eventually, tapping the side of his head. "It helps." I don't respond. I only nod, unsure of what to say. The gate makes a dull whirring sound, and then, after a series of clicks, it grinds and clanks open. 2 disheveled-looking individuals greet us, both with American flags on their uniforms. A man and a woman. The man breathes in the cool mountain air and laughs. He clasps his hand with the woman, smiling at her. She smiles back. They are the first smiles I've seen in days. He strides out into the cold and greets Sokolov with a salute. "Great God, it's good to see you again, sir." The officer grunts and nods and returns the salute, nodding to the woman in turn. She drops her own salute, and her eyes go to mine, looking me over with curiosity. I squirm beneath her gaze. I look away, and the American man turns to me. Pity flashes across his face. "Best of luck to you, man," he says. "Don't let your guard down in there." He makes a movement, as if to place a hand on my shoulder, then decides against it. Thanks," I'll reply awkwardly. "I'll, keep that in mind." And then I watched, bewildered, as he hoists his backpack up higher on his shoulder, and with Sokolov, starts to head out, back across the outpost's grounds, towards that low little wall. Back, presumably, down the side of the mountain. As they walk away, Sokolov turns to me and points. "I will return, 2 weeks' time when duty is done. Do not die." he shouts, and that's all the goodbye I am given. Away he goes, the two men fading gradually into the fog. I slowly turn back to look at the woman. She's still regarding me, head cocked at a slight angle. She's about my age, maybe a little older. After a beat, she sticks out her hand for me to shake. "April," she says. "Hi, yeah, nice to meet you, Adam." She nods. "Come with me, Adam. Welcome to the Outpost." She glances at her watch as she leads us inside, shutting the gate up tight behind her. We have about an hour till sundown. Might be enough time, might not. She shrugs in sighs. She looks tired. Christian's in the tower right now, but the others are all around. I'll introduce you. Right, so am I the only new person? What's the deal with this place? The deal? She gives me another look. How much did they bother telling you? You into the supernatural, Adam? I laugh, though there isn't much humor behind it. The supernatural? No, can't say I am. Is all she says. Classic. The outpost has several interlinked corridors and several defensive-style turrets jutting out through the walls, with sections of thick dark glass or mesh, which I hadn't noticed from the outside, which would allow one to peer out over the rock below. She shows me the various rooms, the storage facilities, the kitchens, and the comms room. One of the rooms is just stacked full of alcohol, vodka mostly. So how many people are stationed here? I ask after a while. Russians and Americans together. What's that like? She shrugs. It is what it is. We're civil, I suppose. They keep to themselves mostly. The Russians. There's only 6 of us. 6? 6 people? For all this space and equipment? She nods. Only 6. Elena tells me that there used to be more, but it didn't quite work out. She makes a noise. I don't know what to make of Elena. There's something not quite right about her. Elena? April nods. Yeah, she's one of the Russians. They've been here longer. The Russians, I mean. Their command makes them stay for 2 months at a time, whereas NATO only needs to do 2 weeks. I think Elena been here a little longer than that though. What makes you say that? April again does not respond. She leads us into a wide, hexagonal room, 6 walls. My mouth drops open, and I am forced to compose myself as I look around. 3 of these walls are comprised of hard glass, framed and reinforced with concrete. They look out over incredibly sharp steel doors. It's difficult to tell how far down they go from my current position in the room, but it looks pretty damn far to me. Pillars of cracked rock and narrow, unstable-looking mountain arches lead away into the mist. A person could probably walk across one, if they were brave to jump across the gaps and go foot in front of foot. There are stairs built into the walls here, leading up to what appears to be a higher level. I glance up to catch a glimpse of the edges of further defensive turrets. The room is lined with weaponry. There are crosses nailed to the walls. I count multiple maps, one of the surrounding mountains, one of Russia, and one of the world. The final map is intersected with dozens of gently curving looping lines. There's a collection of framed pictures on the wall. Most seem to have been taken in or around this outpost. And in the room center, on an old wooden table, is a pile of what appear to be Bibles. And as I consider this, I find myself being searched by 3 pairs of interested eyes. 2 men have looked up at me from their game of cards. One has the Russian insignia, and the other has British. The Russian man's expression does not change, but the Brit raises a hand in greeting. "Hello, mate," he says. "Pleasure to meet you." "Hey," I reply. "How's it going?" "Drugo Amerikaniec," the Russian mutters. His interest already lost, returned to his hand of cards. "This is Charlie." April points to me, pointing at a British guy. And that's Yuri. A woman near the back of the room rises to a stand. "Hello," she says, her accent thick. "Welcome." She does not sound particularly welcoming. Her tone is ice. I take her in. She's tall, long blonde hair, kept mostly in a ponytail. It goes all the way down to her back. I don't know how old she is. 30s maybe? She is beautiful, I decide. But for a curved, brutal scar across her face, it goes down her right cheek, through both of her lips, and finishes at the edge of her chin. And her eyes are piercing, full of icy judgment. She mutters something in Russian, and Yuri chuckles around his cigarette in response. "Don't be a bitch, Elena," Charlie chides in, though there's no heart in his words. And yeah, that's Elena. April gestures to the woman in question without looking at her. Elena holds her stance, arms crossed, and staring right at me. Christian's the 6th, but as I said, he's up in the tower right now. There always needs to be at least one person in the tower. Duty 5. "So what is all this?" I ask, unable to keep my frustrations held back any longer. I've done nothing but get bustled around from place to place all damn day. I'm tired, I'm scared, and I want to know what the hell it is that I'll be doing. What are my duties? Who's in command? "There is no command here. We are the Outpost," Elena replies before April can answer. "Our orders are constant. Command the first door judgment. Duties. There are 5. 5 duties. She lists them off. 5. Keep constant presence in the tower. 4. Do not leave outer ring of the outpost after sundown. 3. Do not use weaponry beyond outer ring. 2. Do not engage verbally with the enemy. 1. Defend outpost. Do not allow enemy into the outpost." I listen as she goes through them. "So who's the enemy then?" I ask, looking from face to face. "The Chinese or what?" They seem to find this amusing. My question creates a ripple of laughter around the room. "The Chinese," Elena repeats. Charlie chuckles and grins wide. "Don't way up," Yuri mutters, shaking his head as he flicks through his cards. "There is no point in telling you who enemy is," Elena says, the grin quickly fading from her face. "You won't believe. They never believe. You will have to see for yourself." She holds up a hand and raises her forefinger. "First night, you stay out of the way. Observe and watch. Yes?" April turns to me. "Probably for the best, Adam." "Oh," she announces this to the group. "This is Adam, by the way." No one responds. "You hear me, yes?" Elena asks again. "Watch. Observe. Do not get in the way." "Sun will be down soon, lads," Charlie murmurs, checking his watch and reluctantly conceding his game to Yuri. "Better get to our stations." "Come to my station tonight, Adam," April says as the others all climb to their feet, sorting their equipment. "And here, do me a favor and take this." She draws from her pocket a cross on a silver chain, and she passes it to me. "Oh, I'm not really all that religious," I reply. Elena snorts as she walks past. "You will be," she murmurs. I really don't know what to make of all of this, so I accept the gift of the cross and prepare my weapon, as I'm not sure what else to do. The minutes tick by, and before I know it, I find myself perched on a section of the outpost's roof, shivering with cold and blood-iced. April sits next to me. I can just about make out Charlie, or perhaps Yuri, at one of the other stations a little further out into the darkness. But I cannot see Elena. Below us and out to the sides are the vast drops of the mountain, like a gaping jaw looming up from beneath. Ice and snow and shadow. The mists have cleared somewhat, and the starlight-tipped edges of mountains glimmer warningly, far, far away into the distance. As I regard this abyss, a slow, cold terror begins to creep its way into my bones. A terror I find hard to describe. "They'll be coming now," April whispers, in a voice that sends goosebumps shivering up my spine. In a way, in the darkness, a deep, low voice begins to sing. As the wind blows the sounds of the song across the mountains, April lifts a cross of her own from her neck and places it briefly against her lips. "You wearing yours?" she asks me, and I lift it out from the front of my uniform to show her. She nods. "Keep it on. We should be fine," she whispers. Though, I gotta admit, it's nerve-wracking having somebody new here. Changes the dynamic a little. The balance. She moves into position against the little wall on the edge of the roof, and with a grunt, she hoists up a mechanical contraption of some kind, connected to the outpost itself. And the thing clanks into place. It looks like a mix between a battered old spotlight and an M4. "What is that music?" I murmur. "April, come on, what is happening?" "How does the song sound to you?" she asks me, staring down the sight of her curious weapon. "Does it sound good?" I consider, heart pounding. I can't make out the words, but the cadence to them, the language, they sound ancient. The tones fade in and out, layered, liquid in their fluidity, from deep low rumbles to higher pitched melodies, male to female and back. "Yeah, it does," I reply. "It sounds good." And although it scares me, this song, I cannot deny its beauty. I try to work out the source of the music amidst the mountains. "You're trying to work out where it's coming from, aren't you?" April says in pause. "Yeah, That's how it starts. Then, you just want to get a little closer to hear it better. Next thing you know, you just have to go and find a singer for yourself. And then you never come back." April clenches her jaw. "Give it a few days. The song loses its appeal." "Approaching!" comes a sudden, sharp voice through the darkness. "Charlie, it must be." "My right!" And so, the night begins. With an almost impossible speed, April hauls her amalgamated weapon around with a mechanical clank, and it slams into place. She takes quick aim, and I am treated to the sight of this weapon in use for the first time. It's quite something. I am forced to shield my eyes as an intense and fiery blast of immediate controlled light is sent rocketing out of the weapon's barrel. This is no spotlight. This is an intensity beam, the likes of which I've never seen. It sparks with dangerous, crackling energy as the beam is sent like a laser out and down towards the abyss, pushing aside the remaining traces of mist as if blown with a great breath. "Jesus!" I shout out loud as the beam is swung around to the left. I cannot help but remember the enormous rifle attached to the outpost's roof, the one I saw when I first arrived. And I wonder if its effect is the same, and if so, what the purpose for such a monster of a weapon could possibly be. April pulls down a lever attached to the contraption side, and she launches the beam again, Little crackles of electricity jump between its gears as another sphere of light bursts from its barrel and screams down into the darkness. I blink as quickly and as rapidly as I can, doing my best to dispel the streaks of color that now dance across my field of vision. Through this kaleidoscope of confusion, I see to my horror a shift in the shadows far beneath. Like a living wind, it snakes and slithers from stone to stone as it approaches. Down below! I shout in alarm. April! And in response, the weapon is swung around and angled down. And again, the light is sent tearing into the abyss below with a high-pitched electric scream. The rippling wind is obliterated into shards in little dark shapes, too far down for me to see what they are. But they rattle on their way down, back down the mountainside as they fall. Like lightning, the lights burn and flash all around me now. My hair is whipped away from my head in the wind, and it feels as if I am in the eye of some terrible twisted storm. The beams from Charlie's position are clear, and I see lights fire out from the tower way over to my left. Further brilliant flashes in the night jump up and illuminate the edge of the mountain all around, and I can only presume that these are Elena's or Yuri's. A new voice rises up through the sound of the song. It comes from nearby. It whispers, a sinister, serpentine voice in the shadows. Fuck, she mutters, pulling temporarily back from the weapon. Adam, there should be a pile of Bibles behind you. Beside the crate. You see him? Bibles? I turn, frantic, scrambling around the nearby crate in the darkness. Yes, I got one. Open it up and read one of the highlighted passages. You want me to what? Which one? Anyone, but be quick, please. Comes that voice again. I start in terror as it sounds like it comes from right behind us, but turning to look reveals that there is nothing there. I see what lurks in your heart. You will take this new one with you. Deliver him unto me. When the voice says us, it is as if two voices are speaking at once. One saying us, and one saying me. It makes both sounds together. I feel something caressing the side of my face. I turn. Again, in a panic. But as with before, there is nothing there. The wind blows, and the night flashes. Come on, Adam, April says, a little more urgently as she fires off another beam. This one, however, seems thinner than the last, not quite as bright, a little less full of life in its energy. Right. Thumbing through the book with trembling hands, I catch sight of a highlighted passage, and I read it aloud. The thief comes only to steal and destroy. I manage, my voice weak in the wind as the battle rages. Shadows drift and dance in the dark. A collective sense of clamoring, of scuttling, and of writhing is shivering its steady way up the mountainside. Yeah, no, try another! April shouts at me as she swings around the weapon, ducking instinctively to avoid a shadowed hand reaching out towards me. But when I look for it, as with before, there is simply nothing there. I find another passage. When you go to war in your land against the adversary who attacks you, then you shall sound an alarm with trumpets, that you may be remembered. Come on, Adam, with heart! April shouts as a circle of wind rises up between the mountains, swirling and crackling with terrible storm-like energy in the night. What the fuck is happening? But I get the message. As I said before, I'm not a particularly religious guy. I don't know if I believe in God or any of that, and I don't know why I'm leafing through a battered old Bible on the side of a Russian mountain in the middle of the night. But we do our duty. so I roll back my shoulders and take a deep breath. I hear that whispering begin again, but I don't allow myself to listen. I project and bellow out loud into the storm, the beams flashing like lightning as the mountains come to life with shadow and fire. When you go to war in your land against the adversary who attacks you, my voice carries loud and clear through the frost-tipped air. April cannot help but shoot me a quick glance with eyebrows raised before returning to the weapon. She brings it quickly around with a clink, and an arc of light is sent rippling through the night. Then you shall sound an alarm with the trumpets, that you may be remembered. At the word trumpets, where before I conjured up in my mind something meek and modest, like a school marching band, one that I might well have taken part in as a child. I see now an army of golden horns aimed up to the heavens amidst swirling dust, blasted loud and charged in their energy. The light of the beams glitters bright in the edges of my silver cross, flailing and waving in the wind. And a terrible, clambering shadow is resolutely obliterated into clattering, rattling fragments and lost to the rock of the mountainside below. And so it goes, for the longest night of my life. The hours crawl by, the shadows come, and the lights flash, and it is not until the first thin slither of light appears welcomingly on the far horizon that we crash back against the crates and the walls. Up here on the outpost roof, April and I. She looks over to me, eyes bloodshot and hair streaked with sweat. Sweat that will quickly freeze across her face if not wiped away. Well, there you go, Adam, she says. Welcome aboard. I don't respond. Wearily, with grunts and grimaces, she clambers to her feet to the sound of clicking bones. She stretches her arms and turns to the left and the right, cooling down the muscles. She raises a hand to someone, though I do not have the energy to turn around and see who she's waving to. Charlie, probably. Come on, she says, lowering her hand and offering it to me. I take it and allow her to help me up, and we head through the doors and back down the stairs. She shows me through a corridor towards the sleeping quarters, and we pass by Yuri coming the opposite way. One of his hands shake, and the motion draws my eye. His knuckles and fingers are all scratched, scuffed and scabbed. He stares right through us as he walks by. For a moment, I think that April isn't going to say anything. Then, at the last second, she says, "Good job, Yuri." Yuri grunts in reply, not showing nor stopping or even turning our way. I have 1,000 questions, but they can wait for now. Despite the rising of the sun, I'm fit to crash. And so once April has shown me to my room, and she's shut the door behind her, I haul off my uniform and collapse into bed. A modest little thing, but right now feels like the most comfortable place in the world. I fall into immediate sleep. My questions are intertwined with my dreams, and they are realistic and unsettling. My sleep is deep and long. I wake much later in the day, unsure of where I am. I try to push away the nightmares of demons in the dark, only to realize that they were not nightmares at all. The wind blows beyond the windows. I groggily roll over and check the time. 15:45. I've slept about 10 hours or so straight. Impressive. I guess I really needed it. I rub my face and groan. So, this is actually real. This is all happening. I clamber out of bed and head to the sink, preparing for the new day, if you can call it a day. A handful of daylight hours left to go, and then what? That same hell all over again? What is this place? I arrive shortly in that white hexagonal room, the room I have taken to be the main one. Yuri is headed right towards me, jaw set and cigarette between his lips. "Hey," I say to him. "Good work with the attack last night." He does not slow his pace as he strides past, but he squints and shoots me a sneer. "Fuck off," he mutters in Russian as he shoulders past me. "Alright then," I say to no one in particular as he heads down one of the adjacent corridors. The others are in here. April, reading a book. Charlie, tidying up a box of cards. And Elena stood watching the sky and the mountains through one of the windows. No one is jumping up to explain this place to me, so I say it straight up, loudly and clearly. "This place is fucked." Charlie and April glance up to me. Elena does not turn around. "I feel like I've been pretty accommodating," I reply. "But come on, for real, I would really genuinely love just a brief explanation or something. I mean, the Bibles, the shadows, light guns or whatever. Help me out here, people. What's going on? Tell me straight." "It's just a prank, mate," Charlie replies after a beat, and I stare at him. He laughs. Elena at last breaks from her position at the window and walks down the edge of the room. "Adam, come see here." Tentatively, I head over. She regards me with those icy eyes, then points to the world map, the one intersected with a series of gently wavering looping lines. One of the lines arcs up to the United States, and she points to it. "Where were you born, Adam?" "Somewhere along this line, yes." I look at the map. "Well, yeah, actually, just here. How did we were all born on one of these lines?" She points to a place in Russia. "Not many born here. Harder for our government to find the Russians. The Americans invited as part of international agreement. They're ley lines." April chimes in, looking up and over her book. "You heard of them, Adam? People born on the ley lines have greater resistance to the supernatural." "Greater resistance to the supernatural," I repeat. But the supernatural isn't real, right?" "As I said, fella, just a big prank," Charlie says to himself, and he leans back into his chair. But we're defending the Outpost from what? Demons?" I laugh nervously, but no one else joins in. "Demons? Really? So does that confirm the existence of hell? And what? Heaven? Is God real? Is it all real?" The gravity of our situation begins properly setting in for the first time. Despite everything, my breathing shallows as the panic starts to rise. April rises from her seat and comes over to me, placing a hand on mine. "Hey, Adam, it's okay." Elena shakes her head with frustration. She grimaces, and the grisly scar that crosses through the side of her lips is pulled tight. "See, this is the problem with NATO soldiers who only do 2 weeks shift. We have to explain this over and over." Charlie calls out, "I've been here for a month, Elena. Don't you forget." "Yes, but you're not typical Charlie," Elena replies in her thick accent. "You're crazy, man." I gather myself. I'm a soldier, goddammit. Pull yourself together, Adam. "So the Russians stay for 2 months. Why is that?" April replies before Elena has a chance to respond. "Because the Russian command don't value the life of their soldiers, of course." Elena fumes and makes a noise of frustration. She closes her fist and marches towards us. She only takes about 2 steps, but it's hell intimidating. The woman is taller than myself. Russians stay for 2 months, she says, pointing a finger, because our command have faith in us to do job well. Because we are reliable, Russians chosen, Americans are names picked from a hat. Hey guys, comes a new voice from behind. The accent is one I recognize immediately from my time in Bardafas as Norwegian. I turn to look at the voice's source. A man about Elena's age comes walking into the room. He is bundled up in fur coats, the outermost of which bears the Norwegian flag. Curls of red hair poke out from beneath his winter hat, and he approaches me at once, smiling. "Hello, friend," he says, taking my hand. "My name is Christian. Pleasure to meet you." He jerks a thumb back in the direction he just came from. "I've just come from the tower. Yuri says you did well last night." I'm surprised by this. "Did he?" There's a pause. Christian scratches his beard. "Well, no, but he didn't say anything bad about you. So you must have done pretty okay." "Right." Christian walks to the nearest of the walls and straightens one of the picture frames, taking a moment to admire the photograph within. "What happened to this tradition?" he says after a moment. "Elena, what do you think? Maybe we should get ourselves a group pic?" Elena snorts and folds her arms. "No," is the quick response. Christian murmurs and scratches his beard, as if in deep thought, turning back to the photograph. "So," I continue. "Yeah, it's nice to meet you, Christian. I'm kind of still getting brought up to the speed here. This outpost, what's its purpose? Like, why do the demons want it so much? Why is it so important to defend?" I think about my own question. And they are demons, aren't they? The shadows at night, or are they? The tone shifts, and Christian turns to me, his eyes sparkling. "You may call them whatever you like, my friend," he says. "But they are the enemy, and why they seek this spot exactly, we do not know. We can make guesses though." He walks across the room to the maps, pointing first at the map of Russia, then at the map of the ley lines. "You see where we are?" he asks, pointing. I nod. "The outpost intersects 3 ley lines," he says. "It's an important place, this. The outpost was built upon it. We have it for one primary reason, so that the enemy may not. There are other such places, I think." He points to a couple of other places across the map where multiple ley lines meet. "Wait, you mean there are more outposts?" I ask, bewildered. "More places like this?" "I should think so, yes," Christian replies. "There is one in Australia, this I know. Perhaps one in India." He points to 3 intersecting lines. "Maybe others." I put my hands to my head. This is insane. This doesn't make sense. "It makes perfect sense," Elena says. And then she sighs. "American yet," she mutters, flicking her eyes away from me to April, before turning away. "Hey now," Christian says good-naturedly. "We are all friends here. Comrades in coalition are the spirit of this outpost." He pats me on the shoulder. "You are very welcome here, my friend. Come, I will teach you how to use the weaponry this afternoon." How the hell is this guy so cheerful? Is all I can think, as he leads me from the room and out into the cool afternoon air, up to one of the garrison posts stationed around the outpost's roof. This one, like April's, look out over an expanse of mist and rock, in a steep, deep drop down the mountainside. Christian begins with a pleasant smile. The corners of his eyes crinkle as he does so. The weapon works as follows. Crank here, turn to move, aim with sights. You saw how it works, yes? I nod. Yes, he continues. They are modeled after the M4, so you should be okay. The light is powerful, but not all powerful. Do not hold its concentration for too long, or the demons adjust to the light. So that's what they are then. They are demons. I shake my head. I just don't understand the implications of all this. Best not to think too much about it. Christian chuckles. Think good thoughts first. It really does help. He taps the side of his head. Before my time, this next little story. But according to Elena, there was a Sikh guy stationed here once. He looks out over the edge. The cross did not work for him, nor the Bibles. He had a rough first few days. How rough exactly? I risk asking. Christian sighs. I do not know. According to Elena, he lost his sight, and then the next night, whilst awaiting rescue, he simply disappeared. He lost his sight? Went blind, you mean? Then vanished. Yes, sadly. I dwell on this as the gust of breeze sends a shiver down my back. I follow Christian's gaze. The view really is beautiful on a clear day like this. Beautiful and terrifying in its isolation. But whilst he was here, Elena tells me that the demons were different. The things they said, the things they tried, they were unusual. How so? Christian shakes his head. I cannot say. I do not know. You would have to bring the topic up with her. How long has Elena been here exactly? I ponder. I know that April doesn't really trust her. That much is plain. She has her suspicions about the woman. And as I said, the Bibles didn't work for him either. Christian says they are supposed to work relatively well for the Abrahamic religions, at least. We shoot the shit for another hour. The first hour to actually go by quickly since I set off from Bardafas. He tells me about the others and about himself. He asks questions about me and where I'm from. He really is a nice guy. He tells me that Elena is friendly once you get to know her, which I find hard to believe. That April was worse than me on her first day here, and that Yuri believes that there is only one demon, and what we see are puppets or appendages of a greater whole. We talk a little longer, and we eat together as a group, a large evening meal. Though, our day is really only just getting started. I am to be manning a turret on the Outpost tonight. The very idea sends that ball of anxiety in my stomach back into its rapid cycle of tightening, tensing. It's a painful physical ache that comes in quick, awful cold washes. Washes that become more frequent as the hours pass and the sun creeps lower. But one cannot stop the ticking of the clock. The shadows draw in. The wind rises, and I find myself at my station, squinting out into the wind. You remember the duties? Christian had asked me. Yes, I had replied, and I listed them off. 5. Keep a constant presence in the tower. 4. Do not leave the outer ring of the outpost after sundown. 3. Do not use weaponry beyond the outer ring. 2. Do not engage verbally with the enemy. 1. Defend the outpost. Do not allow the enemy into the outpost. Christian had nodded. Duty 1 is key, Adam. We defend the outpost. We do not allow the enemy into the outpost. I say it to myself now, at the edge of the mountain, in the midst of the wilderness. The wastes, the vastness and the ice and the cold. There are still so many mysteries left to solve. What's at the heart of the outpost? Why do the enemy want it so badly? Is it really all just about supposed ley lines? And why would so few soldiers be stationed in so large an outpost as this? I wonder if there are still things I'm not being told, and if I can truly trust my teammates. But these questions will have to wait. Do not allow the enemy into the outpost. I murmur out loud, my fingers trembling against the sights of the weapon. As the sun sinks down, below the horizon,